So today we have Balcha, so the founder of Prospect out of Berlin. He helped scale a clean outbound agency from 20K to over 100K a month, then went and started his own. He served 30 plus B2B companies, sent over 3 million cold emails, and now he is a certified Clade and instantly expert. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing amazing. Doing amazing. How about yourself?
Yeah, all good, all good. Look, the very first question that I do have for you is I've been reading some of the posts that you have been creating, and you said that you reached out to your entire market at one point, right? And do you favor the spray and pray strategy, or you prefer more of a picky one where you specify a very specific set of leads that you want to reach out to for yourself or a company? And then personalize as much as possible and get as many replies from them as possible.
Okay, so I think first off, I need to address one thing that you mentioned. I haven't gotten a chance to do this yet. So contact my total addressable market. Okay. I haven't gotten a chance to do that just yet.
Okay.
But we do this for customers. So for customers, we definitely do this. And I would say, like what we at Prospect try to achieve, we try to combine the spray and pray with the very targeted, which I think is actually a plausible combination when you're doing cold outbound, depending obviously on the offer and your total addressable market and what actually makes sense, right? But I would say you can definitely do both, right? So the way we typically do this when we're working with the customers is we will try to segment out their whole total address TAM, and basically create sub-segments. Now, you might ask yourself, what could this segmentation be based on? Well, it has to be based on concrete data points that you can connect to either a specific pain point or a specific value proposition in their offer, right? So the stronger the logical connection can be between those points, the stronger the message in the end is going to be, right? Yeah. So that's basically how it works. But at some point, you might run out of the data points and you might be left with a chunk of the market that can't really be connected to a data point, right? Well, in my opinion, it wouldn't make sense to not reach out to those people, right? You might just have a worse message that you're testing. You might just have to go the more unpersonalized way and try to figure something out in that sense as well. But in generally, just to kind of backtrack to the beginning of the question, I would say you combine both. Because if you don't combine both, you're definitely leaving something on the table,
For sure. Because I do have a follow-up question on the pain points, because you've mentioned to use them as a reference that the company might be a potential fit for you. How do you see the pain points when you're doing the initial prospecting, right? Because what we usually can see is, let's say we can program an AI agent that goes through the website, we can get certain things from the public databases, but would love to know, how are you using it to segment the list?
It's going to be very different depending on use cases, but this is I think one of the last few parts that are best left done by an actual human, right? And it's actually sitting by yourself and thinking, okay, if I was now to spend an hour searching for the best possible prospect to reach out to, what is this person doing? Let's say maybe you run a ads agency, right? And you work with e-commerce businesses that are already running ads because you have a very specific offer that, for example, says, if you're currently running ads, we will beat your ROAS. And, or if we don't beat it, you don't have to pay us, right? For example, it's a no-brainer offer. But what would really help you in this instance, right? If you have this no-brainer offer, what would be the data point that kind of helps you figure this out? You could blast out an email to the whole e-commerce TAM and you could tell them all that you can do this offer, right? Or you could contact only the e-commerce businesses that are currently running ads, right? Then you can analyze their ads with AI. You can look for certain specifics in their ads. You can look for maybe, do they have ads that have been running for more than a year, right? So obviously they're winners.
Yeah.
But then again, those ads could be, they could be spending little money on them. So you need to maybe gauge the amount of impressions or the amount of volume that they're getting from them. So there's a bunch of things that you can experiment with in regards to the actual data point.
So basically, this can also be applied to the signals. right, to what we can get from the company in order for us to reach to them with a very specific offer based on what they're currently experiencing or what they're currently doing. Because we have been talking a lot with the people on this show regarding signals and running the campaigns based off that. I'm curious for you specifically, for your agency, are you running any interesting signals that you can possibly share?
Well, signals, I think there's a lot of confusion in today's like GTM space and in general the outbound space in regards to like what signals actually are. In my mind, like signals are typically going to be connected to the marketing a company is already doing, like somebody that maybe showcases interest. Those are going to be the strongest signals, right? Like if, for example, you get an opt-in to your email list and then all of a sudden somebody on the email list, you can see that they opened your email. That's a great signal, right? So those would be like the first party signals. But like a lot of companies nowadays they can't get enough volume from these types of signals, so they have to go outwards. And essentially when you go outwards, it's kind of like a second layer. You can still potentially, maybe you're going to look at a competitor posting on LinkedIn, and then you're going to figure out who is engaging with their posts, and you're going to like make the connection that these people could be in market. Now, obviously, it's a different type of message that you can send to these people because of this fact that that they're already educated around the topic, right? So I would say that's kind of like the second layer of signals. Again, not a lot of volume most of the time. Typically with signals like that, maybe like the best ones are going to be like follower lists of companies, like which can still be very large lists. And you can then, again, like the most important thing here is you're trying to figure out who is educated around the topic, so you can send them a much more sophisticated message, meaning you can go much more into detail about what makes you different. And finally, then there's like the third part, like this, I would say this is the one that we leverage the most. And these would be the concrete data points. Like, for example, somebody's running ads, right? Like, yes, that's a signal, but like a signal for what exactly? Like it can mean a million things. So I would say this is the human touch. You're developing a hypothesis that you are testing. Because somebody is running ads, how does that connect to my offer and why would they care, right? So as long as you can build a logically intense image in somebody's mind through this connection of the data point and your offer, I feel like you can create strong messaging. And you can break through the noise.
It's very, very interesting on this linking. And by the way, for everyone who is watching live, like and subscribe. We are going live every day on YouTube, X, and LinkedIn. Subscribe to receive the content like this. And also, if you go to the description right now, you'll see a coupon code for the 10% off to get applied to your instantly purchase. Now, when you said you need to understand how the signal can be linked to your specific offer, I immediately thought on your example when you say like ads, because what we've been doing, for example, a lot is if the company is running ads, we know that they're spending money on ads so that they have the budget technically, right? So they can be potentially a higher tier, or they can be scored higher, right? Compared to someone who is not doing that. Another signal, for example, for that a lot of the clients here they instantly being running is the like whenever someone is hiring, right, on the Indeed or LinkedIn for, let's say, an SDR, and you can obviously reach out to them and say, hey guys, you're hiring here, we have we can do the same thing, you don't need to hire, and we can do it cheaper, better, and faster. The question that I have for you, since we started to talk about sending a good volume of the emails, what are some things that you're saying in the deliverability? And obviously in the outreach space, of course, this is a huge topic. Everyone's talking about it. Some people are every month saying, okay, we're cooked, cold emails is dying, but more and more people enter the market and succeeding more. So what do you see? What are the trends? What are you guys doing?
So one thing that we have definitely been seeing in maybe like the last 6 months, I would say, is just how much faster infrastructure decays, right? So infrastructure lasts just like much, much less, that we see on some offers, we can get it to last more than 2 months, 3 months, sometimes even in some cases. And in some cases, infrastructure burns every 2 weeks. So you just, in my opinion, it's just making the game more expensive. Like if you want to continue being competitive and, it's basically just a matter of investing more into an infrastructure. What we do to mitigate this risk is we always have double the infrastructure than what we actually need to send the volume that we agreed to send for a client. And in this case, whenever something happens, we can just always plug in a new infrastructure, right? Like whatever the case may be. And we typically would just then scrap the one that has been sending and put into warm up another set, right? So it's just about, I would say then, technically speaking, you always pay for double and you have extra domain cost, right? So the extra domain cost comes from purchasing new ones as the ones burn. But in this, the methodology that we have in place allows us to never miss a sending day. It allows us to always test this as a variable, right? Like it's not always the infrastructure that burns. Sometimes you can get fingerprinted by ESPs, meaning they will fingerprint your subject lines, they will fingerprint your body, they will fingerprint your signatures in the emails, and you will see a huge drop in reply rates, like basically all of a sudden, right? Like all of a sudden you're just going to have let's say you had like a 3% reply rate, and then you see in a couple of days, you see a big drop and it goes to 0.5, right? You might think you burned all the inboxes, but it could just be one word in the subject line that's actually like been figured out through the email service providers, that it is a mass email, that it is somehow, like breaking the rules, and they send everything that has it to spam. So that's why we also have kind of like a system in place, let's call it an SOP, on how we troubleshoot these problems whenever and like I think if anybody says that they don't like hit these bottlenecks, like campaigns stopping good performance and so on and so forth, I think I would love to see it. But in general, yeah, we have a process in place that goes something along this lines. Like we will first change, we typically have like 10 subject lines. That's what we start with, like in the syntax of the emails that we send. But we will then like shuffle a new 10, which is already made. So it's just being ready to deploy as kind of like a measure if we see performance dip. And then if that doesn't work, we will change the body of the email as a second step, because typically the email service providers, they will flag the subject line first. But if the subject line goes through, if they're flagging something else, it could be in the body text, like a signature, maybe a certain word in the body text, whatever the case may be. So we will shuffle that as well. We have a reserve. When we're onboarding a client, we kind of have a reserve copy that has also been made on the onboarding, and we can just like shuffle this to test if it is a fingerprint actually. And finally, like the third option is swap the infrastructure. So we can have a clear mind. We don't really run any placement tests or stuff like that. So we're focused on just seeing what moves the reply rates. So this is the way we test
it.
So
just so that I understand, sorry to interrupt you, because this is a very important question that a lot of people will ask when they're watching this. How do you determine when something is buried, right? Either the infrastructure or the subject line or the body. So what you're saying is you are using the reply rate as a solo metric to determine the health of a certain thing, but not the placement tests.
No, not really. No, we don't really use them because the way we typically go about solving this, so it has to be one of the three, right? So you're either actually one of the two. So you're either fingerprinted, meaning that your copy has burned. So your copy can no longer, at least in the variation that you were sending initially, can no longer go into the inbox. So that is option number one. So because this option doesn't really cost any money to test, right? Meaning you're just changing the copy. This is why we first test this. So if this doesn't fix the subject line, and a lot of times it will just like you will see an immediate boost because we typically send volume. So most of our clients get upwards of 3 to 5 positive responses per day, like at the minimum, right?
Yeah.
So we can see straight away, okay, it's coming back, right? Like positive responses are basically coming in again. If that doesn't work, right? So like we have two ways of testing it. First off, subject lines, that's the first day. Second day, it's going to be the body. If those two things don't fix it, then we go and swap in the reserve infrastructure that we have in place. If we see that the reserve infrastructure fixes the issue, once the copy and the subject lines didn't help, then we know it was the inboxes actually that burned, right? So in a matter of 48 hours, like we have every single campaign fixed, right? Another thing that you could be checking, and I think it could also be important, is just basically blacklists. But one thing that I am noticing, there has been a lot of talks about, I think there's like one blacklist right now that is going very hard, which is serb URL. And this one is blacklisting a bunch of domains. But what we see a lot of times, even though some of our domains show up on the blacklist, we're still delivering, right? And we're still generating results. So they can also be sometimes, I would say, misleading, depending on your target audience. So if you target enterprise, I think any blacklist will ruin you, right? If you're targeting SMBs, you can get away with weaker blacklists like serb URL. Probably Spamhaus, you will not be able to avoid anything. And you will see it also in your warm-up score, because like a real blacklist will ruin your warm-up score and you will no longer have like a 95% above, and then you actually have to replace the infrastructure ASAP as well.
That's great insights. Great insights. Thank you for that. Yeah. What are you using for the mailboxes providers? Are you using the custom SMTPs? Are you using the mailboxes from Microsoft or Google? What's the ratio? What are you seeing currently? Because we all know that everything changes very fast.
Yeah, we are almost 100% on Google. So almost 100% on Google infrastructure. We have a bit of Microsoft Azure here and there, but we do typically see just Google inboxes perform the best for us. They are the most expensive as well, but they do perform the best. And that's why we do pay the premium for them. And yeah.
Are you setting them up through a third-party providers, or you go to the workspaces yourself and setting up yourself?
Yes. We have partners for infrastructure. Yes, Cheap Inboxes is our main provider at the moment.
What is the average bounce rate that you are trying to operate under right now?
I mean, typically it's below 1%, but like I would say it almost never goes above 2%, And if it does skyrocket suddenly, it can again be due to various reasons. So you have to watch what type of bounce it is. So you have something like a hard bounce, which will be like this will typically be less than 1% because if you're doing everything properly, meaning cleaning your lists, and we're very diligent in that, you will have less than 1% hard bounce, meaning like this email actually doesn't exist. So that's what a hard bounce means. But your bounce can be higher, even though you have a clean list. Your bounces can be higher. You can hit 10%. I've seen some of our campaigns go to like 50% bounce rate sometimes. This just happens all of a sudden, but this is like an issue to be solved, right? So for example, Instantly, a great tool, they will flag this for you. They will never allow a campaign, I think, to go over 5%. So they will immediately stop a campaign and notify you if it's going above 5%. But in general, those bounces can be due to copy. For example, copy can be flagged and it can start being even blocked before you hit the inbox, like spam blocked before you even hit the inbox. I'm not sure exactly what's the message that you would receive, but it is a soft bounce, right? Yeah. So you're denied by the email server. Yeah, that's kind of like what you should watch out for. So those types of bounces, and they can definitely ruin your campaigns if you're not careful, But hard bounces, like they're very easily avoided. So that you avoid hard bounces by cleaning your list. And one more thing, not to be forgotten, you could also see higher bounce rate if you contact a lot of people from the same company. This mistake can happen to anybody, but yeah, you should not be contacting more than 3 people in a certain campaign from the same company to avoid higher bounce rates. The main reason for this is like if you contact like, let's say 50 people from the same company, one of them reports you as spam, right? All of a sudden you go to spam, or you might be spam blocked on the whole domain. Right? So your bounces go way up just due to this fact, right?
And especially this is relevant when you're targeting a higher tier companies, the enterprise guys that have their domain very actively monitored.
Yes.
A reply rate. What is the average reply rate that you are seeing across your clients? A super random question, of course, but a lot of people want to understand, okay, what they can target. You already mentioned, like, let's say it's like 3%, and then like if you see it 0.5%, obviously somewhere is something wrong. Is this kind of the baselines that you're operating from?
I mean, this is very, very dependent on the target audience and the offer. So we have clients with reply rates of 10%. We have clients with reply rates of 1.5%. Right. So, and like both can get great results from outbound depending on how the other parts of the funnel are functioning, right? Like the important thing is like I could like, for example, we have one client where we send 500,000 emails per month for just a single client. And there we have a 2% reply rate at 500,000 emails per month, right?
Yeah.
So a 2% reply rate there, you can definitely, like, it's 10,000 people.
That's
right?
a lot.
It's a lot. That's 10,000 people replying. Also, reply rate can be very deceiving as a metric as well. We watch not just the reply rate. Reply rate is great to monitor deliverability, but you also want to watch the human reply rate. The human reply rate tells you, are enough people saying no to your emails? Are they actually actively rejecting what you are pitching to them? Are you getting positive responses, which is at the end of the day, the whole goal of everything, right? Also depending on the target audience. Let's say if you target e-commerce or something like that, you're going to get a bunch of automated replies, right? So this will skew your reply rate to go to metrics like 10%, right? Telling you, obviously, yeah, you have a great reply rate, but how many positive responses are actually coming in? So yeah, the reply rate is there just to tell you if things are healthy, like if you're hitting the inbox. And depending on the target audience, a healthy reply rate can be 2% and it can be 10% as well. Depending on like let's say if you're targeting, for example, lawyers, like lawyers can have a very high out of office emails. So your reply rate might be also stronger, but the human reply rate is typically very low on lawyers because they don't really respond to emails even to deny you, that like to kind of unsubscribe.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that. Are you saying that even the out of office replies, which are obviously automated replies, can be a good metric for you to track deliverability specifically because you wouldn't get the reply?
The best metric to track deliverability, actually. So that's the only way we monitor. So that's why you would look at the total reply rate, not just the human reply rate, right? So human reply rate, if it's above one, you can have a 1% human reply rate, which is great. Like a 1% human reply rate is like very, very good. And you can have a 5% total reply rate, So just to like put it into place, like how much automated stuff exists depending on the target audience.
What are you using for the lead list? Of course, it depends on the client. I know the answer, but maybe if you can get the generic guidelines, where are you looking at when the client first comes to your doors?
Yeah, as you said, it's going to depend on the target audience, of course. I think we kind of have a tier list, let's call it like that, and what would be the best way to build the list initially for the client. Like one of the things that I'm actually very happy that we implemented even when I started the agency is that we will always on the onboarding have a list of every single company that fits the ICP of the clients
on the onboarding.
On the onboarding, we will map out their total addressable market and have every single company in a CSV file like ready to go, right? Because if you don't do this, it's very hard to make this a predictable channel. Like you will always be stuck with creating new lead lists, and this takes a lot of time. It's just inefficient. I would say like our tier list for building out lead lists is going to be a custom directory as the number one best lead source. Obviously, if you can go and in our onboarding process, like we will ask the client themselves, like number one, do they know, is there a directory of these types of companies that they're trying to target that exists somewhere on the internet, right? So like, for example, if you're targeting agencies, you might want to hit clutch.co and not go into Apollo and filter marketing agency, right? It's just a better way to target marketing agencies. So that's what I mean by custom data source, right? Like custom database that has a bunch of these companies. Is it going to be maybe like a government site that holds all the registered dentists in the United States, for example, or all the registered healthcare providers? Like it doesn't really matter, but that's what I mean with a custom database, right? And yeah, like we will always try to go there. Then again, LinkedIn data for any companies that are present on LinkedIn. I think for LinkedIn data, we typically go to AIArc. So AIArc is our kind of main list building tool right now for any companies that live on LinkedIn, meaning we can hit them with filters. We can filter out the correct segments through LinkedIn data. That can be the second step. Obviously, for anything that doesn't live on LinkedIn, Google Maps is going to be the best source. With both of these, you definitely want to have a qualifier. So like, let's say an AI check that will kind of verify that the thing that you built with the filters is actually an ICP, which is very, very important. Sometimes the data source can verify it beforehand, so you don't really need this step. And yeah, that's basically how we typically map out the companies. For people, we have a 3-step workflow most of the times. So we will use AI Arc to find people inside of the ICP companies. We will use Clay's People Finder because it's free. We will use then as a second step, if we don't find any person in the ICP job titles, we will use Claygent to search the whole internet.
Yeah, of course.
And try to find the actual person that we are looking for. And then through the email waterfall finding mechanisms, we will get their email and verify it. And finally, if we can't get an email anywhere, right? And this is not going to apply maybe to every single ICP that our clients could target. But a lot of times, if they are SMB, even mid-market in a lot of local businesses, you can hit the emails that are listed on the website, right? So this will be the last step if the audience allows it, meaning we will do no first name campaigns. They perform amazing, by the way, a lot of times, better than the first name campaigns for a lot of, like, let's say maybe not so LinkedIn heavy audiences.
Smaller
right?
shops.
But doesn't have to be. This is the thing that I also thought. It has to be a smaller shop, but doesn't have to be. If you're contacting a plumbing business that has 200 employees, it can still have the decision maker's email on the website, right? So yeah, depending on how you define SMB and mid-market, I would say it can be bigger companies as well. But it's very, very effective. It can be very, very effective and a lot of times better than the first name campaigns.
And guys, if you're looking to build your first lead list, and instantly we've been working on the hyper search every day for the past month to make it the best tool to find leads on the market. So you can try it out. You can get the 10% off if you use the coupon code below this video. Now we have a quiz. So it's going to be me asking you questions pretty fast, and you can reply either fast or expand on your answer. You ready?
Okay.
Have you ever bought something from the cold email?
No.
Chess or basketball?
Both.
Okay. H domains or fresh ones for the infrastructure for the clients?
Fresh.
Why?
Mostly because this is what we do, right? Like H domains, I hear that they work great. We just haven't really tried to implement them because you can't brand them to clients, right? A lot of times, it would be very hard to get them beforehand. So you have to send from kind of like unbranded domains, and we typically send from branded.
Google or Microsoft inboxes, you already replied Google, correct?
Yeah, Google.
Can you give from the top 5 at least one subject line that you've been seeing performing really well? I know that cold email marketers don't really love to share things, but if you can give something to the audience.
I mean, we don't use templatized subject lines, it's hard to maybe put it like a template. I would say maybe kind of the framework that we use of like what we are trying to accomplish with the subject line. We usually try to keep it below 3 words. If possible, we put a variable inside it. We try to keep it below 3 words.
Yeah.
We try to make it sound very vague and open, and like something that either their customer or colleague could send, right? Like all small caps, and just that it doesn't sound like anything sales or marketing related, which is the main goal, right? If it can cause an emotion, beautiful, right? And if it can have a variable which helps with deliverability, also beautiful. So yeah, that's the framework that we typically try to go with.
How do you get your own clients? LinkedIn or email?
Yeah. So mostly right now it's referrals.
Interesting. Are you targeting just one niche or multiple verticals?
Multiple verticals.
I'm curious because a lot of people say should just pick one, right? One vertical and go there, and because it's going to be easier for you to deliver the results over and over, but you're going into multiple ones. So I'm curious, was it an intentional decision, or obviously because you're getting most of your clients through their referrals, this is just a natural thing?
So for us, it's very important that anybody that we work with hits certain qualification metrics, right? So we kind of identified what these traits, let's call them, need to be, and we will not work with any business that doesn't have them. For one, they need to have at least 100,000 companies in their total addressable market, which is extremely important for us because we're trying to create a channel that's systematized, can scale, right? Like, so we want to have the opportunity to scale with clients. We don't want them just sending 2,000 emails per day and them being a, let's call it, normal client for us. We're trying to create a maximized version of the channel for their business, right? So not every business can get the same amount of value from cold email. So there's different types of businesses out there. And for some of them, cold email makes way more sense than for the others, right? So that's one thing that we saw. We definitely don't want to work with any company that doesn't have a sales process. So a lot of times you will see, like if I hear that it's just founder-led sales, 10-person team or whatever the case may be, it's going to be very hard, just because of how much effort it takes to convert cold outbound leads. If anybody tells you differently, I mean, props to them if they figured out how to make the leads easier to convert. But like, obviously you're contacting people cold from email. You're going to need to put in extra effort even after the positive responses come in, right? So yeah, that's why we qualify for that as well. But if you hit those qualification metrics, we're pretty confident that we can create a very predictable growth channel for your business. So that's why we're not focused on a single niche, I would say, at least not yet. And I don't think I would go into a single niche. I would probably keep it in a couple of niches that fit these qualification metrics, right?
Great answer. Look, the last question that I ask everyone who comes to the show, if for the next 30 days, you have access to the unlimited budget and the best talent in the world, but you cannot spend it on marketing nor media buying, what would you spend it on? Would you maybe build a certain tool? Maybe you would launch another startup, or you would do something within your current agency?
No, I would definitely do something within my current agency. So I feel like the agency business is mostly constrained by people, obviously, and by project management, meaning how do you handle the projects that you are taking on? I don't think it's necessarily constrained with leads. It's just like marketing, right? So like a lot of times, you hit capacity issues. So I would say if I was to have a very big budget to create something, I would create a kind of like a internal course that would be extremely detailed, built by experts from this space, right? Like, so I could invest in them to build it for my business as well, and kind of like put our like prospect methodology and process on top of it, so that we could coach and upskill people faster. Right. And if we can coach and upskill people faster, I think the business would grow a lot faster as well. So I think that's one of the big constraints in the agency business. And if you figure that out, meaning how to coach people and how to actually create a service that can be, handled by people that don't have to have 10 years of experience in this space in order to provide a great service, right? Then I think you can run a very scalable and successful agency. So it doesn't have to always just be marketing spend.
That's a very good answer, which is basically an internal knowledge base / course.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Balsha, what a great answer. Thank you for coming in the show. Where people can find you?
So people can find me on LinkedIn, and also I can maybe link our website, prospect.co, prospect with a Q. You can see all of our work, the types of clients that we work with, our methodology, and how we handle cold email for clients. And if you're potentially interested in working with us, you can also find the link to book a call and chat about outbound strategies with me. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you for coming on the show. We'll see you soon.
Thank you for hosting. It was a great talk.
Cheers.